Hey guys, it's Kaylee from K-Books and this is my wrap-up post for both September and October. I didn't have time to do a September wrap-up post, so I'm going to do sort of a joint one now. So, in September I only managed to read 4 books. It was a pretty busy month for me, but the first one I read was Heir of Fire by Sarah J Maas. This is the third book in the Throne of Glass series, which is a young adult fantasy series. I absolutely adore this series, and this was just absolutely amazing. If you haven't yet read this series, I would highly recommend that you do, because it's fantastic. I didn't really enjoy epic fantasy books until I read this series, and it really got me into them. It's just absolutely phenomenal. The next book I read was an ARC, but it was an e-ARC, so I don't have a physical copy. And it was Stay With Me by Jaylin. This is the 3rd book in the Wait For You series, and I gave it 5 stars. It's absolutely amazing. It's one of my favourite of the series. I think I enjoyed it the most. It was the story of Calla and Jax, which was just amazing. I loved it. Naturally, I always love all of these books because Jennifer writes them and she's my favourite author of all time. But this one, in my opinion, was better than the other previous 2 in the series. The next one I read was Lobsters by Tom Allen and Lucy Iverson. This is a young adult contemporary book, and I so wanted to love this one. I gave it 3 stars. It was good. The tagline is it's a socially awkward love story, and it is socially awkward, but at times I felt like the authors were trying too hard for it to be awkward, where it was so awkward it wouldn't be realistic that the characters would act that way, really. So that's why I had a problem with this book. So I didn't love it as much as my friends loved it, unfortunately. The last book I read in September was Illusions of Fate by Kirsten White. I was really looking forward to this book because I was a huge fan of Kirsten's Paranormal series. I absolutely loved that series. But unfortunately I ended up DNFing this book. I just didn't enjoy it as much as I wanted to. It's a young adult historical book, and I'm not a big fan of historical, so it just wasn't for me, unfortunately. That's all I read in September. I won't do a top 3 because I only read 4 books and DNF'd one. But my favourite book from September was, without a doubt, Heir of Fire by Sarah J Maas. In October I managed to read a few more books than I did in September. So the first one was an audiobook, and it was Picture Perfect by Holly Smale. This is the 3rd book in the Geek Girl series, and I gave it 5 stars. I love this series. It's amazing. It's fantastic. It's just funny. It's very authentic for how a 15-year-old girl would act and what would say, and I just love it. It's a very light-hearted, funny series to get into, which I find really refreshing when there's a lot of young adult books out there that are quite deep and dark right now. The next book I read this month was The Queen of Zombie Hearts by Gina Showalter. This is a young adult paranormal fairy tale retelling series, and this is the 3rd and final book of the White Rabbit Chronicles. I absolutely adore this series, and I just devoured this book. It's absolutely fantastic. I absolutely loved it. So if you haven't yet read the White Rabbit Chronicles, I highly would recommend them because they are just fantastic. The next 2 books I didn't finish. They were DNFs, unfortunately. First one being Martyr by A.R. Carla. This was a very magic-heavy, witch-heavy book, and I tend to have problems with witch books. I always look at the blurb and think, oh my god, that sounds amazing, and then I'll read them and I just won't be able to connect with the storyline, with the characters, or anything like that. And that's what happened again with this one. The premise of the story was very original and very unique, and I loved that, and it's why it made me pick it up and want to read it. But it ended up just being a bit flat for me, and I couldn't finish it because I couldn't connect with the characters at all. The next one that I DNF'd was Dead Witch Walking by Kim Harrison. This is an adult paranormal series, and it is the first book in the Hollows series. I'd had it on my Kindle for forever, and even though I knew that it was going to be witch heavy, and I do have problems with witch books, I still wanted to give it a go because you never know whether that might be the one that you really enjoy. But I couldn't connect with the characters, and I was just really, really bored. I got about 100 pages into it, and I was just bored stupid, so I just decided to put it down. The next one I read this month was Stitching Snow by R.C. Lewis. This is a young adult sci-fi fairy tale romance book, and I gave it 4 stars. This one is a retelling or a sci-fi take on Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, which I was very excited about. I gave it 4 stars. I really loved it in the end. I absolutely adored it by the end. It was fantastic, but I found the beginning really boring and I almost put it down. I was bored, it was very, very slow, and I felt like it was trying a little bit too hard to be like Cinder by Marissa Mayer. So I felt like it was a bit of a copy, so I was almost putting it down. But I thought that I'd make sure I got to whatever percentage. And by the time I got to about chapter 8, it really picked up and I ended up really enjoying it. So I did end up giving it 4 stars because by the end it was absolutely fantastic. The next one I read was Pretty Amy by Lisa Burstyn. This is a young adult contemporary romance book, and I gave this one 4 stars. I really liked this one. I thought it was going to be a very light and funny and humorous book, but it ended up being the complete opposite. It's quite dark and yeah, it's very dramatic, but I loved this story. My problem with it was the characters. Amy really, really annoyed me. She was just, it seemed like she had no personality of her own. She really irritated me a little bit, but she does get better as the book progresses. I didn't like her friends. They were just horrible friends, but the storyline is so engaging, it keeps you going even though you have the problems with the characters. So I ended up really, really liking this one, so that's why it got 4 stars in the end. The final book I read this month was The Next Forever by Lisa Burstyn. This again is a young adult contemporary romance book, and it is the 1.5 novella of the Pretty Amy series. So this one continues Amy's story after the events of Pretty Amy, and I really liked that. I really love when authors do that so you can see what the characters are still getting up to. And I gave that one 4 stars because it was really, really good. So that's it for this month. My top 3 books, number 3 is Stitching Snow. Number 2 is Picture Perfect by Holly Smale. And number 1, my favourite book of the month, is Queen of Zombie Hearts by Gina Showalter, because it was just fantastic. So that's it for this month. Thanks for watching. Bye!